everybody. How you doing? Thanks for jumping on and checking out this video here on my YouTube channel. Um, I just want to preface this video. So this is a little bit different. I've done, if you follow the channel, if you're a subscriber, I have done some different videos over the years talking about everything from art techniques, art tools, things of that nature. Um, but it dawned on me that maybe, other than experience, how would somebody learn these things? And for me, as a Gen Xer who grew up before the internet was a thing, we didn't have stuff like this, like YouTube, where we could go in and look at tutorials. We could watch our favorite artists draw and learn how they were doing it, what tools they were using, why they made the choices they made. The only thing we had back then to try to learn how to make comics were books, and there were several books on the subject. And I wanted to take time to go through some of those with you that I have in my collection and show you different books that you can still get today, that can help you if you're an aspiring comic book artist. And the one I'm going to start off with on this playlist or this video, series is probably what I consider to be the granddaddy of them all. There may be other books out there that are older, but this one goes back to, the beginning for me at least, and that is How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way from 1978. Was the original copyright on this sucker. And it's great. This thing has been around forever. I remember seeing it in bookstores as a kid. This actual copy was one that my daughter had purchased at a Five Below for $5. So it's out there. It's inexpensive, and it has a lot of great information, as you can see by the stickies that I've added here to highlight some of the things that I want to cover. There's still a lot of really good and really relevant information in this book. So I want to share that with you. There's several others that we will be going over in this series as well. But like I said, this is the granddaddy, and this is the one I wanted to start off with. So let's get into it and take a look at the book together. Okay, so here we go, and here is the book. Um, so yeah, like I said, this was the book that was put out, but you see by Stan Lee and John Buscema, um, and kind of just it covers a lot. So I did want to note, like I said in the beginning, this was the original copyright was 1978, and this particular copy was coming a little bit closer for y'all. Um, was made in 2019. So you can see it's had a long life and a lot of really good stuff. Now, I'm not going to go through everything in this book with you because there's some things that I feel like are sort of a given. These are things that you could learn from other just drawing books or tutorials. We talk about, there's things they talk about like how to draw the human face, how to draw a human figure. Those are things that you can find in basic drawing books. It doesn't have to be specific to comics, but I want to touch on the things in this book that I think are specific to comics that maybe you wouldn't get just from a general drawing kind of how to draw book. Um, so one of the first things I'm going to start with here are the tools, and some of these don't necessarily apply quite as much. I think, pretty much all of them do, but um, obviously they're like any kind of pencil is fine, any kind of pen is fine, brushes. Now this is referring to inking, and there's a whole section here about inking that I think is kind of not as relevant as it used to be because of the advent of better pens that we have, better, uh, marker tip or fine tip pens, and then also um, fewer and fewer people are using brushes. And of course, there's digital inking, right? So the inking part isn't as big, but having some good ink is great. Triangle, I have a number of triangles as well as circle templates, French curves, other kinds of any kind of templates. The erasers, having both kind of erasers, both the rubber hard rubber eraser, um, white, so that as opposed to a color that might leave whatever they use to color them on your paper, nice white eraser, and then the kneaded art gum eraser that they talk about, definitely critical. You want to have those. Lots of rulers. I have metal rulers, plastic rulers, clear rulers. I have 12-inch rulers, 18-inch rulers, 24-inch rulers, and even up to 48-inch rulers for really big pieces of that I'm working on where I have to do long perspective grids or things like that. So a great variety of rulers. And then they do talk about the boards, 2-ply Bristol board. You can, these days, you can go online and buy specific boards that are already set up for comics. Has all sort of the lines on it. That's what I use. But any kind of Bristol board is fine if you want to rule out your 10 by 15 workspace. And a compass. So again, you can have a compass or you can use a template or whatever you want to use. This is also a good page just in that it talks about the language. These are things that I use all the time in my videos when I'm reviewing Spider-Man comics. So we'll actually talk about some of these things, and I'll use terms like the space between the panels is called a gutter. Um, there are thought balloons versus a diagram balloon. Um, Credits, all the little stuff about it says all the things about who publishes a comic book. All this stuff here, indicia. Knowing that word is important if you're going to make your own comics. The difference between a splash page and a regular page. So terms just so that you are talking in a language that other comic book professionals are also speaking is not bad. And so this gives you some of that information there. So same thing here. I talk about these when you go through with comics reviews. You talk about the type of shot. It's very similar language that's used in film. So you talk about a close up where the camera is very close to the panel, the faces are very big, versus a medium shot versus a long shot, which is where you set up your background, set up your setting, your scene. And then you have bird's eye view if you're looking down, or a down shot, a worm's eye view or up shot from the camera's down to the ground. So all that kind of stuff. And again, just language that's really helpful in terms of, again, using, if you want to be a comic professional, you need to talk in the language of comic professionals. Now, this is just talking about using framework, simple shapes to draw things. This is the kind of thing that you could get from any kind of drawing book. So we're gonna move through that. Same thing here to you can take the same concept. You could take a figure and make it out of blocks and squares and then fill it out again. And then where you shade a three-dimensional figure, this is stuff that you could get from, again, all kinds of different art books that are out there. There's off the top of my head, I can't think of any, but they will show you how to draw, just how to draw. But again, we're going to stick to things that are more specific to, for me, about comics and things that I think are unique to this book and stuff that I took from it in terms of drawing comics. Now, perspective is a big deal, and I find it very interesting that before they get to things like storytelling or composition, chapter 3 is about perspective, and perspective is something that's probably one of the hardest things to master, and something that I find most aspiring or young comic book artists pick up late. Maybe some of it because it has to do, it's more of a drafting. So if you've never done anything with drafting, then perspective might be a little bit foreign for you. We're used to drawing things sort of organically, what we see, but perspective is a way of mapping out the world and how things are going to um, fall into actual 3D space. So, again, not to get into the details of this per se, but these show a bunch of examples and really talk about how you use perspective and gives you some very simple methods to help you put it together. So if you are drawing, in this case, it's a room, and you want that room to look fairly realistic. Making sure that you're drawing everything in the correct perspective helps it so that the furniture isn't floating, things feel grounded, and the space feels deep, and that's what you want. So talk about all kinds of things, even so doing grids, doing your perspective grids, and then whether it's 1 point, 2 point, or even 3 point perspective. Um, and then once you get the basics, you can figure out um, how to do it very quickly and kind of not cheat, but you don't have to go through the whole expanse of every panel setting up your horizon line and your vanishing points and then doing a big grid and drawing it. Once you understand how it works, you can kind of just pick a point and fudge it, especially if it's in a relatively small panel. If it's a big splash page or a cover, or a very complicated piece of architecture, for example, I'll do a grid and do it all. And surprisingly enough, I skipped this chapter as well because this is talking about the human figure. And again, if you get any kind of book that shows you how to draw a human figure, you're going to get that kind of information. You're going to learn about proportions and how many heads high a tall a person is and where the anatomy fits and how the shoulder socket fits into the chest and all that kind of stuff. Um, so I thought this is things that you could get anywhere. Now, on the Marvel side, I will say this, right? They talk about what makes a Marvel figure different. So superheroes going to have broader shoulders, more musculature. They're probably going to stand in a wider base and stance. Um, so, but that's again, we kind of, I didn't feel like that was something you couldn't get from just a drawing, um, any kind of drawing book. And then this talks about different sorts of figures. So the Thing has a different body type, the Kingpin has a different body type, but they still follow the same basic rules of how that works. And then again, same thing here, drawing the figure, starting with a stick figure and getting comfortable with bending the figure around, bending the spine, moving the limbs into position. All that stuff for me was very much, again, things you can find in any sort of how to draw book, but it wasn't specific to comics. But here is one of the chapters that absolutely stuck out to me. I remember reading this in a bookstore at the time as a kid and being like, this is the takeaway. And this is it right here. So when you are drawing a figure, what they tell you is, so the figure is punching and it starts from one end of motion and goes through to the other. And that the extreme ends are the best. So if you're drawing a windup, this is the best windup compared to this one, because the action is so extreme. The body is twisted so far, and then here's the best one of the follow through. That whole arm is all the way through, the body's come through. This is what you want to do. So if you're drawing somebody and they're throwing a punch, take it to the next extreme or even one after that and really twist that body around. One of the things I heard a very prominent artist say one time was that if you're drawing your figures like this, so you have sort of, I'll call them bubble figures, right? You're just using shapes, a shoulder, a big bubble for the torso, legs, etc. The further away your head and your hips are, the more action um, your character has. Meaning that if this is a line, if there's a vertical line through this, so in this case you have the center one here, that vertical line goes through the head and through the hips. That's a weak character. And just like it says, it's weak because they are right in line. There's no motion. This one is very similar. This one's starting to get a little better, right? So if I go here, I'm a little ahead of the hips. Here again, I'm a little more ahead of the hips, but look how far this line would be, much further. Same back here, right? The further you go back, and that if this is the center line is going through the hips, the further the head gets away from that center line, the better. And you can see, like, this is a great example. This would be bad. If the head is up here, that's bad. But this is so far apart, it's great. And that's where all the motion and energy comes from. So this is a awesome simple diagram and way to explain. Take your characters, take your forms, and just turn them to 11, and you'll get this, which is comics. This is illustration. This is probably more real. Even this might be more real for like a boxer or somebody who's fighting. This is comics. And we have some more examples of it here. Again, doing these sort of rough stick figure characters is excellent practice. I used to just do pages and pages of these. And you notice the key is what I always start with, which is what I think what they do here. And it says, pay particular attention to the center line drawn through the figure. So that spine, the more curved, the more bent that is, as I was saying, the more action and the more energy you have. The more straight up and down that spine is through the head to the hips, the less action and energy you have. So these are really good. And again, they're just re-emphasizing or restating the same thing. If this is a person running, it looks like a person running. If you drew this out, perfectly real. This looks like a action hero running. Much more energetic, much more exciting. Same thing here. Somebody getting punched. This could look like a completely real punch. That's fine. Being punched and being bent in half and knocked off your feet, that's comics. And then even for standing simple poses, right? Again, it's subtle, but like this one here, you have more of a bend to the spine. The head is thrust forward somewhat compared to maybe this one here. Just changing that hip to head dynamic will bring you so much energy. So these pages here are just things that I remember just really studying in terms of motion. Like just this figure, this stick figure here, it could be anybody turns it into Spider-Man, but what a great simple way to show the shape of a figure and how much energy that's going to have. And you could even then take it, if you want, you could bend this more, bring the head over even further, and it would be even bigger and more dynamic. So that's that section. And then again, to me, this area, this is foreshortening, and the knack of drawing a figure in perspective should have been probably closer to the chapter about perspective itself, because a lot of the stuff is very similar. And what I mean by that is, like you can see, if you're going to do a similar thing. So if your character is made out of square blocks, like it was the same way they did the buildings and stuff, and you have a vanishing point, and the lines all go to a vanishing point, all the lines along that character are going to do the same thing. So what that means is the shoulder that's closer to you, if you're looking up, is going to be higher because this is in the background fading away. Likewise here, things that are closer are going to be bigger. The things that are smaller are going to be further away as the lines converge at your vanishing point. Again, stuff that is important. You need to know that. And in comics, we use foreshortening a lot. Most of the time, it's things like this where like the hand is coming towards the reader, or like this one, a gun is coming out towards the reader. Those are good examples, but also something that you could pick up just in general from any figure drawing kind of book. Same thing here. I skipped the head because, again, you can go to just about any figure drawing book and learn how to draw a human head. None of these things are particularly special to comics. They talk about, your general proportions of how a head is built, and then some of the ways to place this. So, and this is, I hate to say this is a very generic superhero head, but it's a very generic superhero head. And what I mean by that is it's this head could be any number of characters. This could be Captain America without his mask on. This could be Johnny Storm. This could be Captain Marvel. This could be Hank Pym. You name it, right? There's all sorts of characters that this could be because the head isn't overly unique. But again, this is just an example. When you get to here, now you can see how you can take the same rules where you draw that shape and you divide it out. Your eyes about halfway, and then halfway again is your nose, and then halfway again is your mouth. And then you can adjust that based on the size and shape of the head. You get some really cool, crazy characters that then become very unique. And that's the best way to do it. Same thing here to talk about how to draw the female face. Again, something if you get any book that is how to draw people, how to draw human beings, you'll find all these exact same things. I've seen the same examples, the same kind of stuff over and over again. Let's see here. Composition. So now we talk about how you put together the image within the panel. And one of the things I did note here that I thought is good, that sometimes gets forgotten, especially by, again, young or aspiring artists, and that is pick your item or your event or your motion or whatever it is in your panel that's the most important thing that you really want to attract the eyes of your reader to, and make sure that that becomes the central focus of your figure or of your page. So what I mean here is this is the Mole Man, this is Mr. Fantastic, and the Thing in the foreground, and they're attacking, and so he's kind of blasting at Reed, who's swinging up. So this moment of him blasting his arm while it's flying forward, this is the thing. So that way, all the lines, the line of the arm, all these energy lines, the motion lines, the everything kind of points you back to this part of the panel. That's the most important thing. Things like this, like here, this guy's being chased by rats. So you could make the focus on him and have the rats be very small, but by making the rats in the foreground and then putting him behind it, this emphasizes the severity and the danger and the um, I don't know, the aggressiveness, I guess, of these rats, right? So again, it would be very easy to draw a guy chased by a bunch of rats, but you wouldn't feel the same sense of urgency. Here, by doing it that way, you do that. So there's a lot of ways that you can do it, and these are also some just a variety of really good examples in here of just making sure in your composition that you're focused on the point of emphasis. And then these are good examples. So what they do is like I talk about this all the time. Again, in my Spider-Man reviews. So I have, if you're not familiar, I have a video series where I'm reviewing the art of old issues of Amazing Spider-Man. And there's times when I go, well, what if you were to, do more of a close-up, bring this in, make it more important, or I'll talk about how great the composition is. You could have just drawn a guy standing there. That perfectly would have been fine, but look how much better this is. So one of the things here is this angle. And so you can see it's okay to have a person walk in the door. So if there was another person that Doctor Strange is talking to here and a lot of dialogue that we needed to cover or something, that's perfectly reasonable. This is more dramatic. So if the panel is all of a sudden the door opens and somebody goes, "Oh, it's Doctor Strange," this is a better image of that than this one. And the camera angle and the turn is what makes that more dramatic. This one up here of J. Jonah Jameson is yelling on the phone. This is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with this as an image, but coming down from the top is just more interesting. This is a little more boring. This is more interesting. Same thing here with the Doctor Doom. This is perfectly good Doctor Doom, but having Doctor Doom pointing more dramatically and the camera being low looking up makes him seem like a bigger villain. It's the same concept that we talked about back with your figures, and what I said is taking them to 11, right? So you can go up to 10 and there's nothing wrong with this, but if you can go to 11 and bring this kind of energy, that's the difference between this and this. This is okay, this is 11. And that's what you want to do with comics. And then again, they just kind of re-emphasize and keep going through those examples. So they tell a very basic story with a basic plot, and the comics are perfectly fine. Everything works. All the panels are the same size, so you don't have one's a big splash to make it more important. It all works, but then here's the same story with the same size panels, but using more interesting camera angles to make it more exciting. So in this one, everybody, so these are just examples. Again, I could spend hours breaking this down, but I just want to show you that as a student, this is the kind of thing you should be looking at to go, aha, now I know the difference between okay and great. And this is the kind of model you want to be using. We have the same thing here with other simple things like just a couple of people talking and which one is more exciting. The more you can move the camera around your scene, far and away the more interesting it's going to be. This is how to take the description of a plot and then turn it into what's happening on the page just from the description of the plot. I actually have a couple of videos about that where I talk about how I take a script for a comic book and turn it into a page. So if you're interested in how you do that, go ahead and make sure you check out those videos here on the channel as well. Covers are okay. I skipped it because honestly, I feel like young artists tend to focus on this, right? How to draw a cool splash image or how to draw what they think is a cool cover of just a figure, whereas the storytelling is way more important. If you practice and master your storytelling, the cover work will come. It's easier to go backwards and work on just a figure. It's harder to master the art of storytelling within a page. So, and then the last one here is inking, and I skipped it because while some of the concepts are talking about, like using black shapes to anchor your page or to create areas of weight or focus on the page. So if you take away all the line and you just have the dark shadows in the white areas, that's what they're doing there to explain it. But everything they talk about in terms of technique is done with old school brushwork, more technical pens, or dip pens. And again, that's not really the way people ink today, between digital inking and again better pens, better felt tip pens that we can use. There are other things, and plus I have other books that we'll be looking at this series that focus on just inking. So this one's a little bit older. I mean, this is a nice example of like you can ink with lines, you can add some shading, you can go too far with it, and sometimes it gets too busy if you shade and render everything. And then if you don't do enough, it looks like a coloring book. So you need to use your line work to separate, foreground, background, etc. But the books that we'll look at that are specific about inking, we'll go over that in more detail. So that is how to draw comics the Marvel way, and I highly recommend this. Whether you buy it and I mean, for me, I think it makes sense for any artist who is drawing on paper still to this day. Get yourself a copy of this that you can have on hand and just sort of refer back to every once in a while. If you feel your figures are getting stiff, if your imagery isn't as exciting as you want it to be, go back and just kind of look at some of this stuff and go, hey, am I following these rules? Am I still drawing to 11, or am I got have I fallen into an 8 or a 7 here? Kind of a thing. Um, if you work digitally, I'm sure you could get a digital copy of this somewhere, probably from Amazon on a Kindle kind of thing. But again, this is the granddaddy of them all. This is the one for me, the very first book I ever saw that talked about how to make comics, and I am to this day extremely glad I have it. So let's go back and we'll wrap up the video. So that is, let's see. Yep. So that's the video, and that is the book, How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. Like I said, this has been, I think, a great reference guide for me. I think it could help anybody who wants to learn how to create comics. I'm super looking forward. I've got one, two, three, four. I have 5 other books that we're going to look at in this series that I think will be really cool. Some are specific to, or I guess more specific. There's some about inking. There's some that is just about coloring, penciling, and then a couple that are very broad, just talk about the overall process. So looking forward to sharing these with you. I hope you enjoy it. If you do, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and feel free to leave comments. I do check out the comments, and I thank you so much for doing it. If there's a book maybe that you have used, if you're a comic book artist and you find like this is the one for me, and you want me to maybe take a look at it or see if it's one of the ones I will, drop it in the comments and we'll take a look and see what we can do. But here we go. We'll have more of these coming up soon. So thank you all so much, and I look forward to talking to you then. Thanks.